Hello everyone, I'm the Catholic Bible Geek. Welcome back to the channel. I've been asked to do a couple videos by a number of different people on some of the Catholic doctrines that are often misunderstood. At best, they're misunderstood. At worst, they're pretty horribly strawmanned, and they elicit a pretty angry, indignant reaction. Tonight, I want to talk about confession, for example, among others, that I'll do eventually. But confession is one that really does elicit that sort of knee-jerk indignation from some Protestants, not all, but some Protestants. That initial, like, how dare you tell me I have to go to a priest to forgive my sins? I go straight and boldly to the throne of God. That's the problem with you Catholics, putting all these steps in between me and God. So I'm going to explain that and talk about the biblical basis for that, historical basis for that, and all of that. But before I do, there's something I like to assert, and I've said it before on this channel, but I want to do it again with some different words tonight. And that is, whenever someone asks you, well, where is this Catholic teaching in the Bible? Where is it in the Bible? There needs to be an initial challenging to that premise, that something should have to be in the Bible. I've talked about that before. Where is the Bible in the Bible? Where is the table of contents, except for the one that the Catholic Church put in there, and then the one that Luther altered and took some out, and then, and so forth. I mean, you just look at history. This is not even just a Catholic propaganda. No, this is just basic history. You can look back and see that. But what I want to add on to that, or kind of come at it, illuminate a different angle of that, before I can go ahead and get into individual issues like confession or Catholics' belief about the Mother Mary and so forth, is that there's this common tendency, and I know this from my own experience as a Protestant looking at the Catholic Church and eventually converting to it. But when you first encounter Christ through a Protestant, especially like an evangelical Protestant gospel, then you've got the basic essentials there, right? You've got the basic essentials of what it means to be saved, the gospel in general. And then you encounter Catholic doctrine and theology. And it seems like, why are they adding all this stuff? You don't need any of that. No. The gospel's just simple. This is what I believe. This is that. And the fact that the Catholic Church even says, then yeah, validly baptized Protestants are our Christian brothers and sisters. They don't have the full revelation, and they're not fully in communion with the church, but they've got, we believe in their salvation, sure. That can solidify it even more in the Protestants' mind. See, so I mean, I don't need all that Catholic stuff. No, I've got the gospel. It's just me and Jesus, and that's all we need. Well, that way of thinking is somewhat natural, because that's the order of information that you receive. That's the order of logical things you understood. First, you understood the evangelical or just Protestant or whatever gospel, and then you encountered the Catholic doctrine, the much broader picture of religion that the Catholic Church offers. So that's the order of information you receive. And the tendency for people is to think in that order, like, well, yeah, okay, so this is the basic gospel. This is all that Jesus really came to give. And then that Catholic Church just added a bunch of stuff to that later. And that's just simply objectively wrong. It's not even a matter of propaganda, or it's factually wrong. You can go look this up in church history. Really, the Protestant who's saying, I don't need all that extra stuff, is actually saying, I want the stripped down, censored, edited version of Christianity. Because Christ came and established the church, and he established things like confession, like giving his Mother Mary to us. These are I'm going to show you biblical basis for those doctrines, but you also just see it in church history. You see it. Go back and look up St. Irenaeus, St. Ignatius. These are church fathers very shortly after the time of the apostles. And you can read their writings about the real presence of Christ's body and blood in the Eucharist, and how, don't listen to those people who say that's not the real presence of Christ's body and blood. Avoid these kinds of people. And when I get to that point in a conversation with a Protestant, if it gets to that point, if it's a calm conversation and we're back and forth, then quite often it comes to, well, I'll have to look that up on my own, which is great. I've said this before. Great. Yeah, please don't just take my word for it. Do look it up. Look it up. Don't just go to your favorite mouthpiece for your chosen denomination or whatever and find out what they say about church history, and don't go to mine. Don't go to a specifically Catholic. These is basic historical facts. The writings exist with Saint Irenaeus. The writings exist, Polycarp, Ignatius, and so forth. You can go back and you can study the actual writings of these church fathers. It's not a matter of spin. But Protestants never do that. Well, I'll have to look into that myself. I'm just going to take your word for it. Okay, cool. When are you going to look it up? Hey, have you checked into that yet? Hey, have you looked into that yet? I mean, today's day and age, it's a few strokes on Google. Hey, have you looked into that yet? No, I'm because they're perfectly content and comfortable with what they have, and they don't want to be bothered to look something up. And again, that's something I've talked about before. Don't you think you'll be accountable to God for whatever knowledge you've left on the table about him? If you know that here's something you can research and find out more about God that will strengthen your relationship with him, whether it solidifies or justifies and bolsters your own already previously held belief or not, you're leaving that knowledge on the table. What is it? Is it laziness? Is it fear that you might find out something that's going to make you kind of uncomfortable? And the other thing I'll say, and this will wrap up this video, because again, I wanted to put this video out there before I get to videos like Confession and Mary, the Real Presence, and so forth, is that sometimes, again, I'm speaking from my own experience as a Protestant coming into the Catholic Church, there can be at worst, it's pride, a reticence to act on something that you've come to believe is true. Like, okay, I've come to believe that the Catholic Church is true, but at worst, it's pride stepping in the way, saying, well, but yeah, if I can't admit that I was wrong, because then it's like starting from square one. I mean, what about the relationship I had with Jesus? What about the Jesus, the Savior I know right now and here? And, and suddenly I'm going to enter a church which says, oh, you're not even, allowed to partake of the Eucharist yet and stuff like that. Okay, so at worst, that's pride that needs to be overcome. Get over your pride. But I do want to just specify that that's not necessarily the case. If you talk to Protestant converts, even Protestant converts just taking RCIA classes, not even remotely close to actually being confirmed at the Easter Vigil or whatever, they are already quite usually and quite often they can be far closer to Christ and have known him for many, many years, a lot more than some cradle Catholics who may have just, been raised and are just going through the motions of what their cultural, religions are or whatever. So no, it has nothing to do with, oh, well, you don't really know Jesus yet because you're not a Catholic. No, once you come to realize that this is the church he founded, and there are these doctrines, and there are these sacraments, and there are these ways that he put into place, these sacramental, these graces that he placed in the church for me to partake of that you previously didn't know about, that's wonderful. And you will come to know Jesus even more. But that doesn't negate any of your relationship with Christ already. If you're already a Protestant, already a validly saved, baptized Protestant who's been walking with God, my goodness, no. That doesn't put you back at square one in any way. Again, it's the first step on a journey that's going to take you into all of the graces and revelation that God has prepared for you that you didn't know about previously. But that doesn't put you at the square one of your relationship by any means. Because I've talked to, I didn't have that so much myself because I had already stopped going to church, to even Protestant churches. I still had a belief in Christ in general, but I just didn't know what this whole church stuff was. It didn't make sense because I couldn't justify my favorite Protestant church's authority if I couldn't trace it back, to Jesus himself. Historically through the documents, through the church fathers and so forth. I could really uncomfortably so find Catholic leaders and Catholic church fathers, but I couldn't find Protestant ones, and I wasn't willing to accept Catholicism yet. So for years, I just wasn't in the church. But people who aren't quite in my boat, who walk with Christ every single day and are very much involved, whether in their church or just their relationship with Christ and in the Word and so forth, that could be a stumbling block. So I just wanted to assert that as well. That's not necessarily the case. So I just wanted to talk about some of these possible obstacles to Protestants who are coming into the Catholic way of thinking, or are just learning more about it. But again, I just want to reiterate that when I'm going to start making these videos talking about some of these Catholic doctrines and theologies, that it's not about, well, show me in the Bible. You go make your case for it. The burden of proof's on you to make your case for it. Well, no, we're talking about teachings from a church that traces itself back through history to the apostles themselves and ultimately to Jesus. So if you want to say, I'm going to take this part of that religion, but not that part, don't like that part, edit that out, I'm only going to take this little core of it here, well, then the burden of proof's really on you. You then have to prove to me how the Bible, with only the books that you want it to be in the Bible, and that your denomination wants to be in the Bible, only that is inspired, and that's the only source of truth, and it's completely sufficient, and it's the only source of truth out there. Whatever happened between Jesus ascending and the Bible eventually getting into people's hands, I mean, all kinds of things to say about that. But anyway, the burden of proof is actually on other people. Now, this doesn't apply at all or pertain to respectful, quiet, calm conversations I'll have with Protestants, and we're comparing doctrine, and we are searching the scriptures, because both Catholics do certainly believe in the scriptures, divinely inspired as well. But I can't not address that kind of knee-jerk indignation that happens a lot when certain Catholic doctrines are brought up, like confession, like, you guys worship Mary, all that kind of stuff. So I will be making these videos about that, but I think I'll link to each one of those videos back to this one, just to have that said at least first. So, that's on the table, and it's not about, the Catholics having the burden of proof necessarily. So that's all for now. Come back later for more of those other videos and more of our survey through the Bible streams, book studies, and so forth. And until next time, God bless.